ministers are saying they'll take notice of rebel Tory MPs who helped defeat the government last night over the new European Union budget. 53 Conservative MPs joined Labour in backing an amendment calling for a cut in EU spending. James Gray is the Conservative MP for North Wiltshire. He was one of those who voted against the government. Mr Gray, good morning.
Morning, Matthew.
Just explain, why did you rebel?
Well, the Prime Minister's going off to Brussels next week for these very difficult negotiations. The EU wants to spend 10% more than they did last year. The Prime Minister's saying, well, no, let's just keep it at a steady level, but increase it with inflation, so that'd be an extra £310 million a year, which we don't want to spend. We haven't got that money, and people listening in this morning are getting letters about cutting their child benefit, for example, and all kinds of cuts going across the country. How can we spend £310 million more on the EU? So I and the 52 others took the view that we actually want to see a cut, a real terms cut in the amount of money we spend in Brussels. I'd prefer to see it 10% less, but we were prepared to concede just a small cut.
But the Prime Minister's already said he will use his veto in the upcoming financial negotiations if he's not happy. Why is that not good enough?
Well, I think it's a question of tactics, isn't it? If you're negotiating to buy a house, for example, do you go in at the beginning of the negotiation and say, OK, fair enough, I'll pay your price? Or do you go in and say, well, I'll pay rather less than that and be prepared to trade up? We think that he should go in with a tough line. Margaret Thatcher did that very famously and so successfully only 20 years or so ago now. She went in and said, now, hang on a minute, I can't get this through my House of Commons. I'm not going to pay all this money to you guys in Brussels. Very sorry about that. If you insist on doing this, then there'll be a real problem with our relationship with the European Union. I'd like to see David Cameron going in there, all guns blazing, and saying, look, you guys, you waste money. You waste money on for example, why does the European Union have a foreign office? We don't need a foreign office. We don't need a European army. We don't need all of these thousands of bureaucrats slaving
But
away.
by doing this, though, Mr Gray, joining with the 51 other colleagues of yours, haven't you humiliated your leader?
Oh, not at all. Not even slightly. No. He's going to go to these negotiations next week, and he's really going to fight for all of us. He's going to know that unless he gets a good deal, he can't get it through.
I doubt he's very pleased with you for doing it, though, is he?
Well, hang on a minute. Let me finish the sentence. He will know when he gets into the negotiations that he will be able to say to them, unless you give me what I want, I can't get it through the House of Commons, and therefore I'm going to take a very tough line with you. You can't go on wasting the money the way you have been wasting it over the last X number of years, and I insist that you actually cut your budgets. Now, I think that's a very strong negotiating position, and I think, actually, our rebellion last night strengthens the government's arm rather than weakens it.
Well, what about, last night, Tony Baldry, who was a minister in the government of John Major, that often had splits over Europe in the 1990s, he accused you of self-indulgence, reminiscent of past divisions. Aren't you just raking over the past, and you're, to the electorate, saying this is a Conservative party divided here?
No, not at all. We're a Conservative party united. We want to spend less money in Europe. If any of your listeners listening in today think that we should be spending more money in Europe, by all means do write to me at the House of Commons or email me, jamesgrayMP@parliament.uk, and let me know that they want to spend more money. I think the people of Britain want to spend less money on the European Union. I think I was doing my job representing the people of North Wiltshire.
But that actually comes down to, isn't it? Doesn't some of this, though...
You always accused the Today programme of interrupting. You're even worse. I believe that I was doing my job representing the good people of North Wiltshire by voting for a cut in EU spending last night. If people disagree with that, by all means let me know, but I'd be very surprised if I get very many emails.
Well, my point I was going to make isn't what you're just, because you make all the claims about you think people don't want more money to be spent on the European Union, but aren't you just annoyed about the fact that you haven't had the chance, or the country hasn't had the chance to have a referendum on membership of the European Union, because then you could finally say, right, people obviously don't want this, because there hasn't been a national poll about it.
Yes, you're certainly right that my last rebellion in Parliament was when I equally voted in favour of there being a referendum on the subject of the European Union. So yes, you're right, I think... So
it's a case of you and other people not being able to get over the subject of Europe and the way that your party and this government is treating it.
As I was just saying when you interrupted, what people voted for in 1974 was to enter a trading agreement amongst free and independent nation states. I think that's what the common market ought to be. I don't like the European Union. I don't like the notion that we're all part of one great United States of Europe. I want to see us as a free and independent nation state certainly trading very strongly with the other European countries. And that's what I voted for last night. That's what I voted for when I called for a referendum on these matters. And that's what I've argued in the House of Commons now for the last 16 years while I've been the MP for North Wiltshire.
OK, Mr Gray, thank you. You'll be pleased to know it's my last programme today, so I can't interrupt you anymore.
I'm very disappointed by that, Matthew, and thank you for all you've done over the years. You're a great interviewer.
Thank you very much. Well, I'll take that as a compliment and permission to interrupt again if we do meet in the future.
Certainly.
James Gray, thank you for your time this morning. Conservative MP for North Wiltshire, one of the MPs rebelling against the government last night. It's 12 minutes past 8.